Hi, this is Rodrigo from Frame Freak Studio, and this is the Creative Hostler Show. Today, our invited is a little bit different. So far, we have been interviewing people more in the creative animation industry. This time, we have somebody who is in the more commercial side, working for big companies. He's working in Epipheo, which is like one of the biggest film and video and animation producers for companies in the world, and one of the most famous. His name is Josh Gott, and he is the creative director of Epipheo. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So first of all, for the people who don't know about you, can you tell us a little bit about your personal history? How did you get started into learning art, and how was your path to become a creative director?
Yeah, sure. Mine's probably a fairly unorthodox path. So I actually started long ago when I first was kind of starting off in my career working. I had studied theology. That's what I had gone to school for. And so I was actually working in a church of all places, doing a number of different things there, from music to speaking and teaching and managing, and I really got a chance to do a number of different things over the years, and was there for a good while, maybe 10 or 12 years, and then eventually just was ready to try and do some different things. And I had always been drawn to marketing and leadership and communications, and but had sort of had this creative streak in me from kind of my whole life. And so I just sort of, I quit my job. I didn't have really anything lined up necessarily next. I think it was 10 days after my last paycheck at that job, we found out we were pregnant with our first child. So of course the timing was great. I didn't have a job. My first kid was on the way. I knew I had to do something. So I actually went and I approached a guy in town who was running an agency. And I said, hey, I'll work for you for free for 90 days if you'll just give me a shot and let me kind of get my feet wet. And he was gracious enough to do it. His name was Brian. I'm indebted to him kind of for the rest of my life for being willing to hire the world's oldest intern. And so I worked for him for those 90 days and learned a ton. It was great. I actually stayed around for a little while longer, but with the baby coming, I couldn't work for free forever. And so I knew some folks who knew the folks at Epipheo, where I'm at now. They'd been around for a couple of years at the time. And I reached out and through that friend, through that mutual connection. And at first it didn't get hired, and then persisted, and I did get hired, and have been here ever since. I've been here for about 5.5 years. So, my foray was kind of, I didn't go to school to study, animation or video production or anything like that. But I definitely have spent most of my life wrestling with big ideas, complex ideas, things that can be really difficult to both understand and explain, and kind of help translate those to kind of every man and every woman. And so that's kind of been the path that landed me here.
Awesome. Something that I think is missing a little bit about in the animation industry in general, or in the creative industry in general, is that there is this romanticized idea that many people have, that they just have to do the art that they like, they will get magically whatever they want. But here we have like an example of like really good hustle. Like there are not many people, for example, in the creative world, there is like a scene to give your work away for free. But I do think that is like it could be used as leverage to get opportunities, especially if the people are important, like you just did. Like I don't know many people who will go to say like, hey, I will work for free for you for 3 months in exchange for an opportunity. Yeah. So especially in the situation that you were, like pretty much having your kid on your way and being under that kind of stress, what was the mindset that you had when you pretty much chose to do this?
Well, yeah, I think it's really important for anybody that's going through maybe a decision like this in their career. What do I do next? Where do I go? That was a decision that sounds crazy. It was also one that my wife and I had prepared for. We had money saved up. She was still working. We had insurance through her. So, it wasn't one of those things where it was completely reckless. It was certainly a risk in that there was no guarantee on how it was going to turn out. But I want to be quick to remind people that, there's a difference between a risk and a gamble. And oftentimes we can confuse the two and make really bad gambles in the name of, well, I just want to take a risk. That can actually sometimes be a really great way to make a really bad decision. So yeah, I mean, that's just kind of the first thing. The other side of it is like, yeah, you do take that risk, you do step out, and that definitely serves as a motivation to hustle and work, which is a big part of what it means to make the most of any opportunity that comes your way. Is bust your butt, work hard, stay motivated and focused. And if you do that, I think good things are bound to come your way.
Awesome. Also, for the few people that do not know about what Epipheo is, very few, I guess, can you tell us a little bit about the company and also the history of it?
Yeah. So Epipheo, it's a mashup of two words, epiphany and video. So that's what we do. We make epiphany videos. We are a studio here in Cincinnati, Ohio, a team of about 40 to 50 folks here in our headquarters. That's animators, illustrators, creative directors, art directors, sales, marketing, the whole bit. That's kind of our whole team. We work almost exclusively direct to client, so we don't work with many agencies. We're usually working directly with the brands that are wanting these pieces of video content. We do live action as well as animation, though we're sort of known more for our animation work, but we do do a lot of live action work as well. And yeah, we are fortunate and blessed to work with some of the largest companies in the world. Everything from the tech space to healthcare to financial services to consumer goods. Procter & Gamble's here in town, so that helps us certainly there, though they're far from being our largest client. But that's kind of who we are and what we do. Where we came from, the way I like to tell the story is, back in 2009, Google was going to revolutionize the way we work through this new product called Google Wave. And nobody, probably even today, very few people even remember what it is, because it eventually went defunct. But at the time, they were just trying to get the word out and get people to understand what this thing was, and nobody understood it. In fact, Google had like a 90-minute keynote that was up online, and still nobody knew what the heck it was. Nobody could understand it. And so a couple of guys got together and made a short animated video. It was about 2.5 minutes long, that really explained what Google Wave was in a way that was really simple and intuitive and easy to understand. They posted it. It kind of went viral, overnight, which at that time, virality was a little bit of a different thing back then. But I mean, for those days, it went pretty viral. And the next thing Google's calling up, going, "Hey, did you make this video? Why did you do this?" And yeah, sorry, guilty. And they said, "Well, thanks for making this." And one of the guys said, "Thanks for making this. My kids finally know what I do for a living now." So it had just done an exceptional job of explaining what that product was. And so then they were like, "Hey, do you want to make more videos for us?" And so Google kind of became, our first real big client. And from then, it's really kind of been off to the races. I'm trying to keep up with the demand and the growth in the industry and the changes, which there are a ton of. And yeah, that's kind of how the company started, grew very, very quickly, especially in those early days. And then in about 2012, we actually centralized here in Cincinnati. At first, everyone was virtual, so living all over the world, all different places, you know, working out of their basements and all of that. And then we centralized here.
And how do you feel the changes? What advantage and disadvantage do you feel that there was by working online in comparison to working like everybody working in a building?
Yeah, well, I mean, the obvious advantages are the flexibility, right? So you can kind of work when you want to work, do what you want to do, work where you want to work with clothes on, work without clothes on. You know, you get all of this sort of flexibility and being able to be home. And if you've got a family, sometimes that can be a really big advantage to be able to be home and be with them. Sometimes it's a really big disadvantage to, you know, as far as productivity. But that was certainly one of the biggest ones. You know, as a business, it keeps your costs down. You know, you don't have the overhead of a building, and you know, there's a lot of those sorts of costs. But as far as the work goes, I actually don't think there are too many advantages to working in that format. You know, what we learned, especially when we centralized, is, you know, we had developed a system where it was very much sort of an assembly line. So the producer gets in the project and the creative director writes the script. They send that over the fence to the, you know, the designer, and the designer then, you know, starts to create storyboards or animation. And it just this very sort of like disjointed process, which just doesn't always make for the best work. And it doesn't therefore then lead to great client experiences and not great experiences for the people who are actually doing the work. So, you know, once we centralized, now you've got the ability to build more of a team energy. You're able to collaborate on all stages of the process. So our producers, our creative directors, and our art directors, they are a part of the project from beginning to end together. So those three kind of work through every project that they're working on in kind of in conjunction with one another, which that hasn't always been the case either. There was a time even when we were centralized that it felt a little bit more like that decentralized model where it's literally thousands of interchangeable parts, if you will, right? So any producer could be working with all of the creative directors who are also working with all of the art directors. And so there's like innumerable permutations of the team makeup that's working on that project, which again does provide some benefit to you in that you can, in theory, create sort of the ideal team for any project. Ooh, let's get this creative director, they'll be perfect for this one. Let's get this art director, they'll be perfect. This producer, you sort of make the perfect one for the perfect match for the project. But in reality, what you create is so many channels of communication. It becomes so cumbersome. There's too many relational things to try and navigate. I just can't manage, you know, 10 relationships with art directors and 5 relationships with producers and, you know, 6 relationships. It just becomes so unwieldy that sort of theory starts to fall apart. And so once we actually began to cluster things a little more and create those teams, especially when it comes to the producer, art director, and creative director, we began to see a big boost in just, I think, energy and excitement, collaboration. You start to get to know each other's sort of idiosyncrasies and how to work well together and collaborate well together, building rapport, and then the productivity follows.
Nice. Right now we are still working like as a company, we are still working everybody online, but something that we discovered really fast is that, well, in the beginning, and thanks to the internet, like everybody was like, yay, working online, like it's like one of the best things to do. We discovered really fast that it's not for everybody. Like there are people who actually need to be in some place and to need to have that constraint, or else they just don't work at all. And we had those team members in our team, and obviously we had to let go of them because it wasn't working for us. But it was really clear to us that this kind of way that we do things is not like for everybody. Did that something happen as well in the past?
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely some folks that didn't make the jump from sort of centralization, from decentralization to centralization. Some of that may have had to do with they didn't, quite frankly, want to move from where they lived. to Cincinnati, which is, happened with a number of people. They kind of relocated here. But I do think there are certain people, and I think there are certain roles that are actually better suited for working remotely. To your point, if you're an introvert and you're someone who just needs to kind of heads down at the Cintiq or at your keyboard or whatever, working in an office is more distracting. It just is, and we've wrestled with, we have tried so many different things to cut down on distractions and noise, and open floor plans and closed floor plans and no floor plans at all. And just, we've tried everything, and it's just a tension that you deal with whenever you do have that, that central office, that team, is that, yep, you're going to get the good side of collaboration and productivity in some respects, and you're going to get the downside of distraction and loss of productivity at times. So you just have to kind of walk that out. I think the other, certain roles, like I said, sometimes it's certain personalities, sometimes it's certain roles. If you're a role that really is somewhat self-contained, if you're like, hey, I'm going to sit down and I really don't need a lot of input or resources from other people to get this project done, then yeah, it might make sense to just work from home. But the way our teams work, especially now, is it takes people with very specific expertise all coming together to work on a project together. And when that's the case, it's not that you don't do it, or make exceptions. We have some folks that they're just so exceptionally gifted that we actually still allow them to work remotely, but it's very, very few, because we've just seen the value and the benefit of having people in these walls.
Also, on the same topic of the skills and these disciplines that people have, something that I find like a common thread that I find in the creative industry itself is that it's very common to find somebody who has like an amazing talent, but when you put in on a team, it doesn't work. Like this, maybe like the people a little bit crazy, or maybe they are not disciplined, or they deliver things late. So you have this amazing talent, but if they deliver late, or if they cannot work in a team, like it's useless. So I've seen a lot of studios trying to go for decent talents, but that work really well in a team,
Right.
than getting like an amazing talent that can't work in a team. Have you had this kind of problems as well? And if so, how did you resolve it?
Yeah, that's a good one. Let me think how to answer that one. Yes, to your question, yes, we've certainly faced that before. It's somewhat of a leadership, cliche, I guess, that your most talented people are also the ones that are the biggest headaches. I think there is a lot of truth to that. A lot of that's, especially in the creative world, is because doing breakthrough creative means you probably are very comfortable with violating boundaries and pressing the limits, and kind of, I don't know, being creative, as people like to say, whatever that means. But I think the way we've handled that is we do try and go for the most talented people that we can find, that we can work with. But raw talent is certainly not our number one metric, because we work in teams. I think talent can get put on a pedestal unnecessarily if you lose sight of the role and the dynamic of the team. So I think great work comes from great teams, not necessarily from great individual contributors. That's not always the case. I get it. There's sometimes where it's just one person's sort of stroke of genius. Cool. I don't know how I package it and market that consistently. When you have to deliver consistently over time good results, I don't think you get better than having a team. And I don't think you get better teams than by having people who are talented enough but also know how to work well together with other people. And the way we've handled that is honestly more like, this is going to sound super weird, so like let me explain. But Daniel Armstrong is our director of design here, and he is one of the most gifted people I know at fathering people. And what I mean by that is seeing he understands the role of a father in calling people into their destiny, who they are, how they were designed, the potential that they have, and sort of coaching them then to walk that out and take a hold of it. And I've seen him do this with people, some of our most talented people. I've seen him take and help them both understand kind of where they are now and sort of maybe their shortcomings, and then plotting it out. Okay, here's what you need to focus on over the next, 6 months or the next year, and then walking that through with them, coaching them, encouraging them, giving them feedback, helping them come up with new strategies for how to. So that's, like I said, it sounds weird to say fathering is the answer, but I do think that there is nothing more powerful than the role in this world than the role of a father, because I think fathers do call us into kind of that, what we were meant to be. And so there actually is a place for that in the workplace, oddly enough. And I think great leaders know how to do that, and Daniel's certainly one of those.
Weird that you mentioned that, because I heard this concept in different words, but it is the same concept with other companies. And they put this, the chief heart officer,
Sure.
this is what they are calling it. And
Sure.
it's a person that is dedicated completely to that role that you just talked. Like, their only job is like to talk with people, to be in communication of the team, and trying to keep up, like trying to take the most out of them and trying to lead them into the best way. So I think that that is definitely something that we are going to start seeing more in the future. I think, like, trying to focus more on the emotional intelligence, which, to be honest, I kind of suck at. So I have to find somebody else to do the role for me. But definitely think it's really important that you mentioned that.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly become really popular. I think, I was at least introduced to the chief heart officer idea from Gary Vaynerchuk. And I know that Simon Sinek's done a lot of talking lately about the role of sort of parenting within organizations, and certainly this kind of falls within that category. And I think there's a lot of truth there. I mean, it's kind of the reality of, we joke often here about the extent to which we as leaders have to help some of our employees learn how to adult. I mean, it was just like a level of like, hey, yeah, this is like, because we're a relatively young organization, but we have some folks who, this is their first job ever, right? And so they oftentimes don't really have a frame of reference for what the world is like, and so they come in here, and for them sometimes they can feel like maybe we're being too harsh, or expecting too much, or different things like that. When in reality, they just don't know. I mean, they maybe haven't been parented well, or haven't had some of those things instilled in them. And so what are you going to do? You have to like coach them through that.
Definitely. And many people will think that being in Epipheo as your first job is like an amazing thing. And on some angles it is. But at the same time, and I tell this to most of the people that I met, that my first two jobs were doing something that I completely hate. Like, I was a call center agent for technical support, and I hated that on levels I didn't knew I could hate a job. Like, I was traumatized by it. To the day, I still find it hard to do cold calling to prospects, because of that kind of bad experience that I had. But at the same time, I look back, and it's like, well, the reason why I'm able to do all the things that I do now and find it easy, and I don't feel scared by running a business, or pretty much just being happy of doing this, was because I know the alternative. Like, I know what it is to be doing something that you truly hate from the core of your heart. I remember sitting down next to a friend, and we were in the middle of a call, and then there is this guy who comes up to the water fountain, and they take out the big bottle and put the next bottle of water, and they go away. And my friend keeps looking at him, and it's like, when I grow up, I want to be like him. That's how much we hated that.
Yeah.
And the day we quit that job, we were like really happy. I went out in the street, and it was like, oh, freedom from this.
Yeah.
And even though, like, I absolutely hated that and was like the worst 6 months that I had to go through, at the same time, I think that brings a whole different perspective when you're going through hard times doing something that you love, because it's like, oh yeah, this is still way better than that.
For sure. Yeah, I mentioned my friend Daniel a second ago, and one of the things that he kind of instilled in me is this idea that prosperity never creates or generates character. You know, we never, our character never gets built through the good times, through prospering. That's not to say that prospering isn't good, but, you know, opposition, hard times, those are the things that always create character. Oddly enough, especially in children, which, you know, we talk a lot about. We have a lot of big families here, lots of kids. I'm any day now going to have my fourth. And, you know, when you think about, you know, with kids, you know, when they get all those Christmas presents, that doesn't build character. It builds some other things, but it doesn't build character. And when they go through challenging things, that builds theirs. So the same thing with employees, right? When you get a raise, that raise is the result maybe of a lot of hard work, but that raise doesn't necessarily build character in you. It's the challenges that you get kind of presented with. Those are the things that really develop you on the inside. Anyway, sorry, bit of a rabbit trail, but
Definitely. And it's even now, like, as I can imagine that you have gone through some hardships as well in Epipheo and in your career and had some challenges. I had those moments where it was like completely stressed out, like everything going wrong, and hard times trying to raise this company. And then I think, yeah, this is still way better than those times where I was in the call center. That this is still feels much better than that. So I definitely agree with you in that. Other thing that I wanted to ask you is that how do you do as a team in order to try to create like the best project on a consistent basis? Because I think that is really hard for most companies, especially in the creative industry where everything is like subjective.
Sure. Yeah. Well, a couple of things. Let me see if I can put all this together. So one thing we do tactically to consistently deliver good work is we rely on processes a lot. So Epipheo, especially in its early days, we were fortunate to have a number of folks who were very systems thinkers. And part of that was just luck. Part of it was almost by necessity, because the volume of work was so high. There was no way that we could get it all done and scale the business out without there being some processes in place. So, you know, we have a pretty well-oiled process that we've developed over the years that helps us go from, you know, the kickoff to completion, and in a relatively predictable way. That's not to say that the creative outcomes are predictable, but it certainly helps, you know, to kind of keep us on the rails. There are things that we have learned that over time, these are just consistent best practices. So we just try and stick to those. So I think for whatever your art is, or your sort of discipline is, trying to figure out what part of this can I systematize that basically keeps me doing the things that consistently lead to other good things. I think that's a first step for anybody in over time, just repeatedly generating good work. I think, what was the other thing? The second thing was, we've wrestled with this a lot. When you say, how do you do this to create your best work or good work or whatever, remembering that we aren't ultimately the ones that get to decide what best is. We work with clients. We're in a client service business. And this is a really big tension that I think artists especially have to wrestle with. The difference between an artist and a designer. So an artist, and I'm going to paint some broad brushstrokes, and this might piss some people off. I apologize. That's not my intention. But I'm going to oversimplify some things. There's the artist, and I think the artist, they're primarily interested in expression. They're not interested in telling you what you should think or believe or say in response to what they've created. They've created it. It was an expression, and it's up for you to interpret. The designer says, what is the problem that needs solved? And I will create something that, quite frankly, isn't up for interpretation. When I design a chair, I'm not trying to leave it up for interpretation as to whether or not that chair is a chair. I want you to look at it and go, oh, that's a chair. I should sit in it. Like that to me is sort of the big difference between art and design. Now let's translate that to kind of your question. I think we are in the business. If you serve clients like we do, we are a design business. Even though we have artists, we are a design business. Basically, we are trying to build something that fixes a problem that they have, and they are a part of the answer to the question, is this good? Because they are one, their opinion matters because they're the ones freaking paying for it. But also, they're the ones that they know how they're going to deploy it. They know how they're going to measure it. They know how they're going to track the effectiveness, and then kind of what they're going to do accordingly. So what we have to do when we answer the question of like, is this good enough, is we have to balance it with sort of as objective as we can, an outside sort of objective answer to just, is this an effective piece of communication? Is this something that a human being would want to watch and that the average human would watch it and have an epiphany moment? Or is it, a train wreck? And then secondly, is the client satisfied? Do they feel like, it's that their primary objectives have been hit? Our process is very collaborative. They have input at all of the stages of the process for that reason, because it would be really dumb for us to just assume, thanks, we understand. We'll be back in 6 weeks or whatever with your final video because it's just going to be amazing. No. We're in this together. They need to have a voice into it, and so that's kind of how we've designed our process.
One thing when you open that to the clients, and we have gone through that a lot of times, is that eventually you get one client that wants to micromanage everything or has their own ideas of what should work. And when he starts putting his input, it's like, that these are bad ideas, that these ideas won't work. However, he wants to implement them on the project. And how do you deal with clients like that?
Yeah, well, we've actually never had a client like that. I'm kidding. We get that all the time. Our sort of joking term here, we call that reaching over the sneeze guard. If you've ever gone to Subway to get a sandwich and they have that sneeze guard over, this idea that I would reach over and start making the sandwich myself. It happens all the time, right? Your question is, what do you do about it? I think that what do you do about it is you have to understand at the end of the day, it is their video. and we are in the service business. And again, I think the difference between design and art is so critical to get right, because the worst thing you can have is an artist in a design business. When you have someone who their primary goal is to express their own creativity versus their primary goal is to solve a problem on behalf of someone else, those two things, they can go well together, but they can also be oil and water. So now where this becomes challenging is when you have someone who's like, no, I understand the difference between those two, but I think that the best way that I can serve them is by coming up with the most artistic thing or the most creative thing, because that's the thing that's going to solve their problem. Yes, the problem is that's subjective, and no one knows the right answer to that. No one knows exactly which one is going to ultimately yield the right result. It's all a bit of a crapshoot. And at the end of the day, they're the ones signing the checks, so you kind of they get the upper hand. But I think what we try and do in those moments is really, really listen. So for as much as their meddling is frustrating and reaching over the sneeze guard is annoying, I think what we have learned is that usually there's a good reason. You know, they may not always be the best at articulating why they want, you know, that character's hair to be blue instead of green, but there's a reason why. Very few times have we worked with people that the answer to their neurosis is, oh, they're just crazy. You know what I mean? Like, we want that to be the truth. We want the truth to just be like, oh my God, these people are absolutely insane. So now I'm justified in, you know, wanting my own thing, right? But the reality is people are not crazy. A few people are, but most people, if they're gainfully employed at, you know, a reputable or respectable company, they're probably not insane. Okay? So they may have, maybe they have somebody breathing down their neck. Maybe they have a boss that's really hard to please. Maybe there's something crazy going on at home that we couldn't even, you know, dream about what it would be like to be in their situation. So we just have to have empathy for them. We have to just drill into why are you asking for that? Not because I want to dispute it, but because I really want to understand what's going on, and then try and kind of work with that. So that's kind of how we do it. I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but yeah, just trying to have as much empathy as possible. I don't know. It seems like the wisest path forward.
Damn good answer. Also, I don't know if this is something that just had happened to me or if this is something common, but when I started doing business, I was, because of insecurities, I was like trying to reach smaller clients and such. However, I found it to be like really, really hard. There was a level of challenge trying to win there that was insane. And pretty much when I started contacting really big people was kind of a lucky moment, to be honest, because I emailed one guy who I completely ignored who he was. When he said yes, I started looking who he was, and he was like this huge guy inside the animation industry, and that's how this interview started. But then I thought, like, okay, let's try more guys like this, and started contacting them, and I found out like it was way easier, like contacting people who were like bigger in the industry, who had like who were more famous and things like that. There is this quote from Tim Ferriss saying that it is lonely at the top, so it is easier to get like the $1 million deals than it is like to actually get like 10 deals for $1,000 each and so on. Have you found something similar in your, through all your life, right? Or it is something that is just specific to me, or that happens very little?
As far as the sort of friction you experience working with like bigger clients versus smaller clients?
Yes.
Yeah, they're both challenging. I would say neither one is sort of the perfect situation. What we have found is when typically if we're working with a smaller client, they're likely a startup because they have some sort of new disruptive technology that needs explained because nobody knows what the heck it is. Those can be a lot of fun because they are smaller, their team is smaller, you don't have as many processes to go through on their end, but you have sort of this like founders syndrome where it's like, oh my God, they created this thing. They might be like the only full-time employee, and they really, really want to be sort of hands-on and very prescriptive. And so that's maybe a downside, but they're full of energy and excitement, and they're really invested in the project. On the other end, you're working with large companies, and we work with a number of large companies, and processes, man. I mean, it's, you've got large teams that all need to speak into and deliver feedback, and sometimes that feedback's contradictory. Then you've got to go through legal reviews, and then you're having to react to legal feedback that you have no idea why this is an issue, and there are purchasing issues. We'll run into this a lot where with like large companies, if you're not already an approved vendor, that they don't even want to talk to you, right? Because just getting on the list of people that they can buy stuff from is a whole process that they don't want to have to deal with, right? So they both have trade-offs, and I don't know that either one is the perfect scenario. You just kind of have to adapt to the ups and downs of both.
Pretty much. This is another kind of view that I had in mind as well, that maybe wasn't just like that kind of experience. It was just that maybe I had these skills for contacting being people that I didn't knew about completely, and that maybe I didn't have the skills to deal with smaller clients or hadn't learned them. So yeah, I think there is kind of this thing as well of what are your unique advantages that sometimes you don't know about, and you have to use them in order to grow into the business, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, for us, there is certainly one of those that we have sort of stumbled on as a business. Talk about sort of hidden advantages, maybe things that you weren't keenly aware of, but you kind of oh wow, this actually, we're actually really well suited for larger organizations. In fact, I might even say better suited for larger organizations than smaller ones because of the structure of our team. You're going to get a ton of value if, say, you have a 20 video series that you need to roll out over the course of 2018. Because you've got this team, we're centralized, we work consistently with one another, we have tons of resources both here and elsewhere. So working with one vendor, one team that can basically provide a lot of the value that like maybe an agency would provide, but without having to separate your either your financial resources or just your return on time. So we do a lot of that work where either people will buy in bulk, if you will, they'll buy a bunch of videos at one time, or it's serial content, like what we do with the Hoover Institution out of Stanford, where we produce videos that release every 2 weeks for their Intellections series. So we're constantly working on videos for them, turning them around very quickly, and keeping pace kind of with their demand. That's just not something a small team can do. It just you're going to get way too maxed out way too quickly, and then you're not going to be able to. You'll miss deadlines. You'll piss clients off. We're actually built because we are for our industry. We're quite large. We're able to handle higher volumes and bigger, like more ongoing campaigns.
Definitely. Also, something that I wanted to ask you is that What do you consider is the most common mistakes for people in this industry are committing that they do not realize that they are making?
Hmm. That's a good one. You know, I always hate to answer those questions because it's pretty presumptive to know what, to assume to know what other people are doing wrong. I think one thing that I have over the last year that has stood out to me, that I'm not going to say is wrong. It's very confusing to me personally. We went to like an animation festival earlier this year, and you just got this sense of the ethos of this group was very much, hey, client work, having to do client work sucks. It's always going to suck. Do as much of it as you have to fund the real work that you sort of love to do, until you sort of run out of money and then have to do client work again. And it almost felt like there was this, it's almost you're using clients rather than serving clients. I don't know, maybe I'm naive. I just reject that narrative. I think that that's a big mistake, to start seeing your clients as a means to an end, at least in that way, that somehow your true craft, your true art, there was even one speaker who said that, her breakthrough moment was when she finally realized that her clients were there to serve her, not the other way around. And me personally, I think that's foolish. I think that's, I actually think that that's disrespectful. And I think at the end of the day, we're all called to serve other people with the things that we've been gifted at. And it just all seems very self-serving. And I don't know, man. I think what struck me is how well received that message was among the group. There was almost this like, yes, this is exactly what I wanted to hear, and exactly the narrative that I want to live. And I was kind of there just going, oh my God, this is insane. I think this is so unhealthy. And it really, now I'm going to sound definitely sort of like a crotchety old man. It just sounds so immature. I mean, it sounds like a kid, wanting their parents to kind of continue paying their allowance so they can do whatever the heck they want to do. And I just think that's unfortunate. So I don't know. That's maybe one thing.
I definitely agree with you. I have seen a lot of that happening in the animation industry, in the creative industry, that there is this animosity, towards commercial kind of work and clients and things like that. I have even seen some people, like, for example, one of the most famous things that happened is that when Disney bought Pixar and they decided to go full on 3D, there were a lot of artists who were given the opportunity, because they were saying, like, we are not going to do 2D animation anymore, but you have the opportunity to learn 3D. We are going to teach you. We are going to cover all of it. We're going to help you out with it. And many people say no to that. Like, they were stuck, like, no, my art is 2D and traditional animation and things like that. And they got so stuck and angry. And even today, there is this kind of, I still find some people from time to time who made that decision. And it's like, well, now that virtual reality is coming, like, you're screwed. Like, 2D animation is definitely not going away, but at the same time, I like, if things changes, I just see something good to adapt to it, and as you say, like to serve and your work and do it because you want it and to help others rather than to use them to your own benefit. So yeah.
Yeah.
Also, question. This is a really hard question as well. I think that, but maybe you can bring some extra advice onto this. Is that, let's say you wake up tomorrow in a whole different dimension. Nobody knows about you, but you have your skills, you have all your experience, you have $500 in your pocket and a computer. What do you do to get to this point as fast as possible?
I mean, I think the first thing is I start making things. You know, you whenever you can, you make something. You know, I work around a lot of people who have a lot of ideas. I'm one of them. I'm constantly, you know, new ideas, but the world is not changed by idea people. The world is changed by doers, by people who actually make something. And when the world can see it, then they sort of are either drawn to it, or they change their behavior, or they decide to hire you. You know, when we hire people at Epipheo, we have them make something. You know, so if you're a designer, you're going to make an animatic, because interviews are pointless, resumes are pointless. None of these things matter. I've hired people before and didn't even look at their resume, because I don't really care. I want to know if you can do the work. So we'll give you a prompt, and you'll come back to us with something. So, you know, I think the world we live in today, the things that we make the way for us, you know. And so I would just find a way to take that $500 and make the best stuff that I could make, and then start sharing it. And I think when people see good work, you know, they want that to be a part of their organization. And so I think it starts to open up doors for you.
Awesome. Also, is there any last advice that you would like to give to people who want to start this kind of careers that we haven't talked about into this interview?
Not really, man. I mean, I feel like we've kind of covered some good stuff. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the stuff we've talked about has been really relevant. I think that last bit about just doing the work is really important. The importance of kind of staying humble, serving others, working hard. I think that's, you know, a big one. You know, a lot of times we see, you know, younger generation of folks coming in that, you know, maybe doesn't realize what a 40-hour work week looks like, you know. So let's all work hard and get after it. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think you can go wrong with, you know, work hard and push yourself and stay humble.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for being here and giving us your advice. I truly appreciate it. I know that you're really busy, especially now with your kid on your way. So congratulations on that. And thanks a lot for making time for us.
Thank you, man. It's been great having me, and look forward to talking again soon.
Awesome. So this has been the last episode of the Creative Hustle Show. If you like it, please click the like button on the video below, and also share this interview with your friends. Until next time.